There were two of them, twins, a boy and a girl, barely 12 years old, with matching dark eyes and that particular kind of stillness that comes from being raised by someone who understands silence as a weapon. They sat in the crystalline holding cell of the Reptilian Hegemony's flagship, hands folded in their laps, backs straight, breathing synchronized. The cell was meant to intimidate, walls that shifted between transparent and opaque, floor that pulsed with psychic dampeners, air that tasted of copper and fear. But the twins just sat there, waiting. The girl, Kira, had counted every guard rotation, 17 minutes between shifts. The boy, Maven, had memorized the hum of the ship's engines, A-flat, with a minor harmonic distortion on the port side, structural weakness probably. He filed it away. Commander Sethrak of the Hegemony's Bloodscale Division watched them from his observation throne, tongue flicking between serrated teeth. His scales were deep crimson, marked with rank scars that told of 100 conquered worlds. He had overseen the interrogation of thousands, broken warriors, spies, diplomats. These were children, human children, soft, weak, emotional creatures from a backwater species barely worthy of notice. "Why do they not weep?" he hissed to his second, a smaller reptilian named Visk. Visk's tail twitched nervously. "They have not spoken since capture, Commander, not even to each other. The psychic scans return nothing. It is as if their minds are shielded. Impossible. Humans do not possess natural psychic defenses." "Then perhaps," Visk suggested carefully, "they were taught." Sethrak's eyes narrowed. "Show me the acquisition report." A hologram flickered to life. A small colony on the edge of Terran space, isolated, minimal defenses. The twins had been alone, playing near a creek. Easy targets. The raid had been clean, efficient, perfect, except for one detail. When the soldiers had approached, the children had not run. They had simply looked up, evaluated, and allowed themselves to be taken, as if they had been expecting it. "Where is their guardian?" Sethrak demanded. "The file says there is only one. No parents listed. Just a guardian, human, male, name redacted from all accessible databases." Visk paused. "That is unusual. Even military files typically retain partial data. This one is completely erased, as if someone with significant authority wanted him forgotten." Sethrak felt a cold weight settle in his gut. "What is his occupation?" "Unknown. The colony records list him as a teacher." Sethrak stared at the twins. They were looking at each other now, a silent conversation happening in glances and micro-expressions. Then Kira smiled. Just barely. Just enough. And Maven tilted his head exactly 3 degrees to the left. Some kind of signal. "Increase security on this level," Sethrak ordered, "and send the ransom demand to Earth's diplomatic channels. These are leverage, nothing more." But even as he said it, his instincts honed over. Decades of warfare screamed otherwise. Something was wrong, something in the way the children sat, the way they breathed, the way they did not fight or plead or show any reaction at all. They were not hostages. They were bait. Far beyond the Hegemony flagship, at the edge of sensor range, something dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Not a ship. Or rather, not a ship in any traditional sense. It had no visible engines, no recognizable hull pattern, no identification beacon. It was black, seamless, and shaped like a blade. And it did not move like technology. It moved like a living thing, predatory, patient, aware. Inside, there was only one occupant. A man sat in a chair grown from the ship's organic interior, fingers resting lightly on armrests that pulsed with neural feedback. His name had been struck from every database in known space, but those who remembered him called him the Ghost. Others called him the Reaper. The Hegemony's intelligence files, buried deep and marked with the highest warning tags, called him Subject Zero. His real name was Adrian Kade, and he had raised 2 children in peace for 7 years. He had taught them mathematics, philosophy, how to fish, how to read the stars. He had left his old life behind, buried it, burned the records, walked away. But walking away did not mean forgetting, and it certainly did not mean forgiving. He had been making breakfast when the emergency beacon activated. A small chip implanted beneath each twin's skin, keyed to his biometrics, designed to trigger only in one circumstance: capture. He had dropped the spatula, closed his eyes, and let the old pathways in his mind reopen. The ones he had sealed away, the ones that made him what he was. Now he sat in the dark, watching sensor data scroll across his vision through a neural link. The Hegemony flagship. Dreadnought class. Crew complement of 4,000. Weapons capable of glassing a planet, shields rated to withstand sustained bombardment from an entire fleet. He had destroyed 3 just like it during the war. This one would be easier. He was not restrained by rules of engagement anymore. Adrian's ship, the Wraith, was equipped with technology that should not exist, stealth systems that bent light and gravity, weapons that operated on principles Earth scientists had not even theorized yet, and most importantly, an AI core built from something organic, something ancient, something that had been asleep in the deep dark between stars until he found it. The ship was not just a tool. It was an extension of his will. He reached out with his mind, and the ship responded. A hunter recognizing its master's intent. Find them, he thought. The Wraith sensors, far more advanced than anything the Hegemony possessed, pierced their shields like tissue paper. 2 biosignatures. Deck 7, Section 12. Alive, unharmed, calm. Good, Adrian whispered. Stay calm, little ones. I'm coming. On board the Hegemony flagship, alarms began to shriek. Sethrak's head snapped toward his tactical officer. Report. Unknown contact at grid 729, the officer hissed, scales pale with fear. It appeared without warning. No FTL signature, no approach vector. It is just there. Identify it. Trying, Commander. Sensors cannot lock. Visual confirms a vessel, but all analysis returns null data. It is as if the ship does not exist in our reality. Sethrak's claws dug into his throne. Raise shields. Charge all weapon batteries. Broadcast a challenge. The communications officer worked frantically. Channel open, Commander. No response. Wait. We are receiving something. Not audio, not data, just a pulse, repeating every 3 seconds. What kind of pulse? The officer's voice dropped to a whisper, a heartbeat. In the holding cell, both twins looked up simultaneously. Kira's lips moved silently, counting. Maven closed his eyes and smiled. The rhythmic pulse echoing through the ship's systems was not random. It was a message. And they knew the code. 3 beats. Pause, 2 beats. Pause, 1 beat. Coordinates, time markers, instructions. Their guardian was not just coming. He was already inside their defenses. Adrian did not wait for the Hegemony to respond. The Wraith slipped through their outer sensor perimeter like smoke through a screen. Hegemony technology was advanced, but it was still bound by conventional physics. Adrian's ship was not. It existed partially out of phase with normal space, a trick he had learned from studying the remains of a civilization that had died before humans learned to make fire. To the reptilians, he was a ghost, a flicker on their screens, a shadow that should not be there. He moved closer, past destroyer escorts that never saw him, past patrol corvettes whose sensors looked right through him. The Wraith's hull shimmered, adjusting its phase variance with each passing second. And as it moved, it did something else. It listened. Every communication, every sensor pulse, every command transmitted across the Hegemony's network. The ship's AI absorbed it all, learned their protocols, cracked their encryption, and began to whisper back. False data, phantom contacts, contradictory orders. On the bridge, chaos erupted. Tactical displays showed enemy vessels that vanished when targeted. Sensor officers reported hull breaches that did not exist. Communications became a garbled mess of overlapping transmissions. Sethrak roared for order, but his crew was already fracturing under the weight of invisible assault. "What is happening?" he bellowed. Visk stared at the main display, where the single unknown contact had multiplied into dozens, each one identical, each one impossible. "Commander, I believe we are under attack." But not physical attack. This is psychological warfare, sensor manipulation. They are inside our systems. Then purge the systems, hard reboot, everything. We tried. The intrusion regenerates faster than we can remove it. Visk's voice cracked. It is learning our countermeasures in real time. This is not standard military AI. This is something else. Sethrak felt ice crawl up his spine. He turned to the holding cell monitor. The twins were standing now, hands still relaxed, faces serene, and they were looking directly at the camera, as if they could see him, as if they knew. Kira raised one hand and waved, a child's gesture, friendly almost, but her eyes were cold and knowing. Maven mouthed 2 words, too late. The lights went out. Every system on the flagship died simultaneously. Power, sensors, life support, gravity, everything. For 5 heartbeats, the entire vessel floated in absolute darkness and silence. Then, emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in blood-red light. And in that moment of transition, Adrian moved. The Wraith materialized directly alongside the flagship, so close their hulls nearly touched. No weapons fired, no boarding parties launched. Instead, a single pulse of energy, invisible to conventional detection, swept through the Hegemony ship. It was not an EMP. It was something far more precise. It targeted neural implants, cybernetic enhancements, AI cores, every piece of technology that interfaced with organic minds. And it whispered a simple command: sleep. Across the flagship, 4,000 reptilian soldiers collapsed, not dead, not injured, just unconscious, their brains overwhelmed by a signal they could not resist, could not filter, could not even perceive as an attack. Within 30 seconds, the entire crew was dreaming. And in those dreams, Adrian left a message, a memory, a warning. You took children that were not yours. Remember this feeling. Remember that you were helpless, and know that mercy was given once. It will not be given again. Sethrak fought it. His rank implants had better shielding military-grade psychic dampeners. He stayed conscious 10 seconds longer than anyone else, long enough to see his crew fall, long enough to see the holding cell door open on its own, long enough to see a figure step through the wall, not through a door, just through the wall itself, as if matter was negotiable. The figure was tall, lean, dressed in black that seemed to drink the light. His face was calm, almost gentle, but his eyes were the eyes of something that had killed so often it no longer felt the weight of it. Adrian Kade looked at Sethrak and spoke softly. You touched my children. Sethrak tried to speak, to threaten, to bargain, but his jaw would not move. His body no longer obeyed him. He could only watch as the human walked past him toward the holding cell, toward the twins who were already walking out to meet him. Kira reached him first. She did not run. She simply stepped into his arms and let herself be held. Maven followed, wrapping his arms around both of them. Adrian closed his eyes, breathing them in, checking them for injuries with hands that had once torn apart warships, but now moved with infinite gentleness. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. No, Kira said. They fed us, Maven added. The food was terrible, but we are okay. Good. Adrian pulled back, looked at each of them. Did they question you? They tried, Kira said. We did not answer. Did you use the protocols? Everyone, Maven confirmed. Just like you taught us. Adrian nodded, then let us go home. But as they turned to leave, Kira paused. She looked back at Sethrak, still frozen, still aware. She tilted her head, studying him with the clinical curiosity of a scientist examining an insect. He thought we were easy, she said. They always do, Adrian replied. Will you kill them? Adrian considered the question. The old him would have. The him from before, the weapon the military had forged and sharpened and unleashed on humanity's enemies. That version would have erased this ship and every soul on it without hesitation. But he was not that anymore. He had become something else, something harder to define. He was a father, and fathers protected, but they also taught. No, he said finally. I am giving them a gift. They will wake, they will remember, and they will tell others. Sometimes the best weapon is not death. It is fear. The 3 of them walked back toward the wall. Adrian raised one hand, and the molecular structure of the hull simply parted, rearranging itself into a doorway that led to nothing, to darkness, to the space between spaces where the Wraith waited. They stepped through. The wall sealed behind them, and they were gone. Sethrak woke 6 hours later, along with every other member of his crew. They were alive, unharmed, but changed. Each of them carried the memory of absolute helplessness, of being rendered unconscious by something they never saw, never heard, never understood. And burned into their minds was a single image, a man standing in darkness, a man with eyes like deep water, a man who had come alone and taken back what was his without firing a shot. The Hegemony's high command received Sethrak's report and immediately classified it at the highest level. They scrubbed references to the twins. They deleted Adrian's name wherever it appeared. They issued a quiet directive to all commanders. Do not engage human targets with familial connections. Do not capture human juveniles. Do not provoke unidentified human vessels. They did not explain why. They did not need to. The survivors spread the story themselves, in mess halls, in planning rooms, in quiet moments when soldiers shared their fears. The story of the ghost, the man who came through walls, the man who put an entire dreadnought to sleep, the man who was no longer a soldier, but was still the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Adrian sat in his small home on the colony world, watching Kira and Maven do their homework at the kitchen table. They worked in comfortable silence, occasionally helping each other with a problem, smiling at private jokes. Normal children doing normal things, except they were not normal, and he knew it. They had his training, his genetics, his capacity for violence wrapped in their young bodies. But they also had something he had never had as a child. They had love, stability, choice. Kira looked up. "Are we safe now?" "For a while," Adrian said, "until the next time someone forgets." Maven frowned. Why do they keep forgetting? Because predators always think the prey is weaker. It is their nature. Adrian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Our job is to remind them otherwise. "Will you always come for us?" Kira asked quietly. Adrian turned back to them. His expression was soft, but his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Always, no matter where you are, no matter who takes you, I will find you, I will bring you home, and anyone who harms you will learn what I am." "What are you?" Maven asked, not afraid, just curious. Adrian smiled. It was a sad smile. "Your guardian, and their nightmare." The twins returned to their homework. Adrian returned to the window, and far above, in the cold and dark, the wraith orbited silently, invisible to all sensors, waiting, always waiting, because peace was a choice, but protection was a promise, and some promises were kept with blood. The Reptilian Hegemony never raided that colony again. In fact, they added it to a classified exclusion list, a list of places that were not worth the cost, not because they were defended by fleets or weapons, but because they were defended by something worse, a single human, a ghost, a father. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, where pirates, enslavers, and conquerors gathered to trade their stolen goods and plan their next atrocities, a new rule emerged. Unspoken, but universally understood. If the target has a guardian, walk away. If the children seem too calm, run. And if you see a black ship that does not belong, pray you are not already dead. The twins grew older, they learned more, they trained harder, and they carried with them the knowledge that they were loved, protected, and never truly alone. Because somewhere, always watching, always ready, was the man who had left war behind but would return to it in an instant if they needed him. Adrian Kade did not seek glory. He did not want recognition. He wanted only one thing, to watch his children grow up safe, and he would burn the galaxy to ash to ensure it. The Hegemony learned this, and in learning, they survived. Because the ghost gave mercy once, and wise predators knew better than to test whether he would give it twice,